Okay, so welcome to adding and subtracting fractions. Let's take a look at the board. So if I wanted to add this half of a square to a quarter of a square, what answer would I get? Well, what I could do is just use logic and say, well, this half a square is actually 2/4 of a square. So if I have 2 quarters here and I have another quarter here, that means in my answer I'm going to have, well, there's this one, and I'm going to add a quarter, just put it over here, and that will be those 2 squares added together. So this was a half plus a quarter equals 3/4. Now what I did was I converted this to an equivalent fraction, so quarters to quarters. I need to compare. By doubling, if mathematically, I doubled the numerator and denominator, so they had the same denominator. So 2 times 2 got to 4, and the top must be doubled as well. So if I was writing that out as a problem, I would do a half plus a quarter. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm going to change the half to quarters by multiplying above and below to make an equivalent fraction with quarters. 1 times 2 gives 2. 2 times 2 gives 4, so that's equivalent. Those 2 fractions are equivalent, plus 1/4. So 2/4 plus a quarter is 3/4, so the denominator is still in quarters. So when we're adding and subtracting fractions, we must make sure that our denominators are the same. We're comparing the same things. Okay? So we wouldn't just add 1 plus 1 to give 2 and 2 plus 4 to give 6. So 2 over 6 wouldn't make any sense if we thought about it. Alright, so let's do these further 2 examples. In our first example, we're going to do some addition. We're going to do 2/3 plus 1/6. Now we want to do this without a diagram. We need to find the common denominator. So the common denominator will be going back to the last unit, using lowest common multiple. It'll be the smallest common multiple between 3 and 6. So you could start to list out the multiples of 3 are 3, 6, 9, 12, etc. Multiples of 6 are 6, 12, 18. Well, we're already there. We already have the lowest common multiple, 6. We know that, and that's from the last unit. So if they both divide evenly into 6, then, or split up evenly into 6 bits, a bit like our quarters here, this time we're dealing with 6. But we can change this part of the fraction. 1/6 is already in 6, so I'm going to say this is equivalent to 2 times 2 and 3 times 2. So I'm making an equivalent fraction, put it over 6. But I haven't changed the fraction because I've just doubled the top and doubled the bottom. It's still the same fraction, it's just an equivalent fraction. So that gives me 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6, plus still 1/6. Okay? So now they're both out of 6. So similar to our first example, when they're both out of 4. And now they can be combined, because if I have 4/6 and I have 1/6, that means I have 5/6 in total. Okay. Our next example is a subtraction example. Same process. We need to find the common denominator, the lowest number that both 8 and 5 divide into. Now we can start to list those. 8, 16, 24. So for 8, I'll do it over here. 8 goes into 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, okay, and so on. We'll see about 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, still not 35, and 40. We got one. Yeah, we kind of knew that anyway, didn't we? But that's the lowest one. If you don't end up picking the lowest one, so if I just did 8 times 5 and said that's a definite denominator, that would work, because if you just times them, they're both must be multiples of that number, and you may end up having to simplify the fraction at the end, and that's okay if you want to just multiply. Now, what do I need to multiply the 8 by? Well, we just discussed that. 8 times 5 gave 40. So this first fraction is going to be out of 40, and the second fraction will be out of 40. What do I need to times the top by? Well, the same number to keep it equivalent. It has to be the same value as 5 over 8, it just split up into more bits. So that will be 25, and 5 times 5 over 40. Subtract, same sign. So 1/5, well, that's going to be multiplied by 8 below the line to get to 40. And what do I need to multiply above the line? Well, I have to do the same operation to above and below the line. Above and below the fraction. 1 times 8 is just 8. Okay. How is this different than adding? Well, it's subtracting. So just you subtract the top number is 25, the numerator is 25, take away 8. So 25 parts out of 40, take away 8 of those parts out of 40, we're going to be left with 17 parts out of 40. Now what you may notice here is you could probably just maybe cross multiply. If you remember, this method is 5 times 5 give 25, and 8 times 1 give 8. If you want to use that method, you can. You may need to simplify at the end. But make sure we have the same denominator before we can add or subtract. Okay, so that is basic adding and subtracting fractions.